Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Dennis. So today we're going to do a review of the Asus Prime B550 Plus motherboard. We're going to get it out of the box, have a quick look at everything that comes with it, and then we're going to get right into it. Here we go. Okay, so here's our first look. It has the Asus Aura Sync, so for synchronizing all your RGB colors, all that kind of good stuff. Of course, it's Ryzen 5000 desktop ready. Has the AMD AM4 socket, and we'll go over all the other features. But first, let's open the box and see what we got. All right, so getting it open, I do find that I do like the Asus motherboards quite a lot. I got away from it for a while, but now I'm kind of getting back. So I can see in here already there's a SATA cable, so we'll get that out in a minute. First, we're going to dig this out. This is our motherboard, of course, and we'll have a look at that afterward. So there's a quick look through the cellophane. We'll get that off. Well, the static bag, you can call it cellophane. Okay, so we're going to get this out and see what everything comes with it. Now, the SATA cable is tucked away in here. Okay, that's really all there is. You get two of them. You have your I/O shield. So this motherboard does not have a built-on I/O shield. Very basic, nothing much to it, but this is kind of more of a budget motherboard. Well, at least it was when I bought it. You have your M.2 standoffs, so putting it in so you can screw it on. You have your booklet, okay, so your user guide usually comes with your CD or DVD rather for all your initial software you're going to need. So that's good. And they usually have a little spec sheet as well. It tells you about your memory and everything. So let's get to the motherboard. Okay, so we'll go over some of the basic stuff. Like this is your AM4 socket, which is of course for your Ryzen 5000 series, 4000 G series, and 3000 series desktop processors. Okay, the memory can go a max of 128 gigabytes. So your 4 DIMMs down here, a max of DDR4 4600 on overclock, and of course you've got the gray slots. So the gray slots are your second and fourth slot, they call it, or it's often referred to as. So those are the slots you put your memory in first, and then followed by the two black slots. Okay, just the way it works out. So slots 2 and 4, and there's 1 and 3. So if you populate them all, it doesn't matter which ones you put them in, as long as the memory is all the same, so that they're not incompatible. So we're going to go over the motherboard, go over everything. We'll start with the bottom, and the bottom is very simple. You got your 24 pin for power, your USB 3.0, and that's pretty much it, except for your SATA, which you have 6 SATA. Let's get a quick look at that, just so you can see it. So you got your 6 SATA here, right? Not a problem. And we'll continue on and go over some of the other features on the board. Okay, so just to make sure I mention it, that your 6 SATA ports on the side here are 6 gigabyte per second. So I always want to make sure that I mention that. So you've got your clips on the side. So depending on what kind of a CPU cooler you're going to put on, you may or may not use them. If you're not going to use them, you just unscrew it with those 2 screws on both sides. And that comes off. And then you'll be able to remove the back plate and put on your own CPU cooler. If you're doing water cooling, most likely those will have to come off. I don't think I've ever seen one where that actually did stay on. So just to point that out. Your heat sinks are pretty good. I'm not sure how good they're going to be. They look like they'll be pretty good. And Asus motherboards tend to be better than others. So your experience may vary. Some other features I want to point out. So we're going to be on the bottom here. That's why I've kind of zoomed in this area. So you have your RGB header. So your RGB header is a 12 volt header. So don't plug in your 5 volt to it. You could short things out, potentially short out your motherboard. Haven't seen that, but it's possible. Okay, you have your 8 pin for power over here. And it is just an 8 pin on this motherboard. There's no 8 and 4. So no need for any special cables or anything like that. You have your CPU here and another chassis fan header here. So that's pretty much it on the bottom. So I'm going to move over and go to what you would see on the back side of your motherboard. Okay, so going to the back of our motherboard, the way they explain it on your manual can get kind of confusing. So we want to go over that. So you've got two USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports. Now one of them is a ×1 type A, and then you have one USB type C. So those are these two right here. So that's your type C, and that's your USB 3.2 Gen 2. Now your other four, okay, so these two here and these two here are your USB 3.2 Gen 1, all right? And then of course you have two USB 2.0 ports. Of course, then you have your Ethernet, okay? So it's your 1 times Realtek RTL 8111H, which is 1 gigabyte Ethernet, okay? And of course, when you move over, you have your SPIFT out and your other audio jacks for your mic, headphones, all that kind of good stuff. So turning it around, you have your Realtek ALC 887 7.1 channel high def audio codec, okay, which supports jack detection, multi-streaming, and front panel jack retasking. And it supports up to 24-bit or 192 kilohertz playback. So you have your audio shielding. So you see this little line that goes up here. Okay, it goes all the way down. Okay, so that helps to prevent popping, hissing, all those extra noises that you don't want. So audio shielding is what they actually call it. And of course, it's they call it a LED illuminated, so it will light up a little bit. So to easily identify it, you have your premium Japanese audio capacitors, and you have a dedicated audio PCB layers, and you have a unique D-pop circuit. So turning it back around, we're just going to finish up with, of course, our display port and HDMI. Now, something that's happened, and I've gotten this way more than I would have thought. If you have a motherboard with integrated graphics, so you have an APU, so it's like a 5700G, for example, it's going to have built-in graphics. So you could use these slots. But if you have a graphics card rather, and you want to use the graphics card for its maximum potential, like it's an RTX 3070 Ti, for example, don't plug in here. Plug into your actual graphics card. I get that so often, you wouldn't believe it. And it's a simple fix. Just unplug it from there, plug it into your actual graphics card. And in some cases, you may actually have to go to your NVIDIA control panel and change the way it's set up in there. Now, most of the time it's automatic, so it'll choose between the two of them. But if you only want to use your 3070 Ti, like I say, as an example, go in and specify that you only want to use your dedicated graphics card. It'll solve a lot of problems for you, and it will make things run a lot better. Make sure you downloaded the drivers directly from NVIDIA. Don't take the Windows driver. Yes, it'll work, but it may cause you problems as well. So keep that in mind. So one of the most important parts of your motherboard when you're building your system is going to be where your front panel connectors are going to go to, and all your extra special features, or like your addressable RGB headers, if you have extras. So I want to go from left to right. So right here is your front panel connectors, okay? Followed up by a channel fan 2, two USB 2.0s. You have another channel fan here. You have another, now see where there is a missing pin? That's how you know if it's addressable RGB or RGB. So your RGB is here. So that's the 12 volt 4 pin. And this is your 3 pin 5 volt addressable RGB. So you have 2 RGBs in this motherboard and 1 addressable RGB. And that should cover you for most things. And of course, then on the far right is always going to be for your audio. And it has a TP header. So trusted platform header. So just to be aware of that. So we want to move on to our expansion slots. So of course, this is your PCIe 4.0 times 16. So it supports times 16 mode. Of course, on this motherboard, you have the AMD B550 chipset. Your second slot here is 1 times PCIe 3.0 times 16 and supports up to times 4 mode. And you have 3 PCIe 3.0 times 1 slots. So those are this one, and that one. You can do PCIe 3.0 times 16, 2 runs of times 2 mode, and PCIe times 1 dash 2, or PCIe times 1, 3. Basically what I just said. So in a nutshell, it does support AMD two-way Crossfire, and of course we don't worry about NVIDIA anymore because it's pretty much just your unsingle graphics card. The way they're making them, how could you put two in most systems anyway? But SLI is pretty much a dead thing anymore now. So one thing I just want to clarify is this here is your TP header, or TB as in Tango Bravo. Okay, your trusted platform module header, if you decide to put a hard one in here, is right there. So can be confusing maybe, but just be aware that's not the one you want for your trusted platform module. This is the one you want right there. Of course, then you have another channel fan and an AIO pump header there, just if you're going to run an AIO. Now, so some people will tell you to use the CPU fan for your AIO, but you can use the actual AIO. The difference is you may have to go into your BIOS in some cases and activate or turn off your CPU temp in the BIOS. The reason for that is if you're plugged into the AIO, it doesn't know that you don't have a CPU fan running, and it's looking for it, and it's not seeing it, it's not getting a temp, and it might shut your system down. So if you're plugged into the AIO, which is fine, it'll work without any issues. But you just have to make sure that you're not getting some kind of CPU fan error from being plugged in there, or from being plugged into your AIO, I mean. If you're plugged into your CPU fan, it'll work. I've been doing it for years, and everything will just, it'll be fine. I know I'm confusing that a little bit. So suffice to say, CPU fan header will work either way, whether you're using air cooler or water cooler. If you're using a water cooler and you want to use the AIO, by all means do that. Just be aware you may get an error message saying CPU fan not detected. It's not giving you temps, and it could cause you some problems. So you may need to go into your BIOS and make some changes. Okay. Not a real big deal. Most times if you're going to buy a system, it's already done for you. If you're building it for yourself, that's just something to be aware of. So some other features I want to go over, of course, are the important ones to me is your M.2 drive. So you have an M.2 drive. Okay, M.2, that's going to go there all the way to 21110. And you have a second one up here. Okay. So obviously the one nearest to your CPU is your faster one. Usually your PCIe 4.0, and the other one's usually PCIe 3.0, which is the case on this motherboard. So if you have any issues or you're not sure, consult your motherboard manual just to verify. Don't even take my word for it. Maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I read it wrong. I usually don't, but you never know. It's possible. Don't forget about your graphics slots, like I mentioned here. That's your faster one. You got your safe slot, which means it's reinforced, and you're going to need that for your bigger graphics cards, things like that. And this is your faster one. This one's PCIe 3.0, and of course your 3 PCIe times 1, or PCIe 3 times 1 slots. Okay, so I think that covers most things on here. One thing I don't usually point out is these little slots here. Okay, that's where your standoffs are going to fit into. All right, so that's how you can line up your motherboard when you put it in your case. Now they have like a little circle here. Now, a lot of people don't realize that's kind of like a safe zone. So when your screws touching your motherboard in there and you're fastening it to that, it's kind of a built-in zone to kind of help to protect from any short circuits or that kind of stuff. But in any case, no matter when you're putting it in a system, make sure that those are securely in place. Don't over tighten. It's a big, big, big no. If you over tighten it because you just want it that little bit more, because you're used to tightening screws down really hard when you're doing other things, don't do it on a motherboard. It will cause you some problems. Now this is an ATX motherboard, so it measures to 24.4 centimeters or 9.6 inches. Or on the other flip side of that, of course, is the lengthwise is 30.5 centimeters or 12 inches. And that's the standard for most ATX motherboards. I don't think I've ever seen one other than that. So there you go. And even though I did say that the M.2 goes all the way up to 22.110, of course it will take a 2280 and 2242 and 2250. So just pretty much every size, except for the little maybe M.2 key ones. So just be aware of that. And something I don't say that often, but I should reiterate it. Anytime you're plugging something into your system, make sure it's powered off. Okay? You can cause yourself all kinds of grief by plugging something in with the system up and running. You could short like multiple components out. So turn it off, put in your graphics card, put in your memory, reseat your memory, and all that kind of stuff with the system off. You can do it with the system on if you want to, but you're running a huge risk. So don't do that. And another thing is all your fan headers. So your CPU fan, your CPU optional fan, your channel fans 1, 2, and 3 are all Q fan controlled, so default speeds. The AIO pump will run at full speed. So something just, again, to be aware of. I know I say that a lot, don't I? I gotta really, maybe I'll caption that or something. And something you will see on the motherboard as well, which is important to know, and I don't often mention it as often as I should, is you have a clear, so CLRTC, okay? You're going to see that on your motherboard, and basically what that is your CMOS RTC RAM, okay? So it's your clear CMOS header. You can use that to erase the RTC RAM. Okay, so turn off the computer, unplug the power cord, using metal objects such as a screwdriver to short the two pins, plug the power cord, and turn it back on. Hold down the delete key during the boot process, enter the BIOS setup to re-enter the data. Okay, so this should only be done as a last resort, and you really have tried everything else. So just because I want you to see the front panel connectors, how they all go on, I just put this here real quickly for you to look at. Mostly it's because it's really difficult to see those otherwise, and you got to be right in there. And when you're already got it in the system, having that diagram might really help you out. I mean, it should be in your motherboard manual anyway, but for some reason you don't have one, you got a second hand, that'll help you out right there. It's pretty much all the same for most every motherboard, but just in case you have a question for this particular motherboard, I've now provided it to you. And because I've mentioned it twice, but I haven't actually told you what it is, the TB header is your Thunderbolt header. Okay, so if you have Thunderbolt accessories or whatever you want to use, it has it on the motherboard. So again, this one right there. Okay, so just be aware of that. It supports Intel's Thunderbolt technology and can allow you to connect up to 6 Thunderbolt-enabled devices and a DisplayPort-enabled display and a daisy chain configuration. So if you're one of these power users out there, that might be something you want to know. So for that one person out there that want to see the back of the motherboard, here you go. This is your back plate. Okay, that's where the brackets are holding it on the one side and this side. So 2 screws on each side, and this is going to come off. So when you're building your system, if you don't plan on using that, you can take that off beforehand, and that'll just save you having to worry about it dropping down and causing you any kind of grief. So I want to go over a couple of features that not everybody's aware of. So most Asus motherboards are going to have 5 times protection. So you got your safe slot, surge protected networking, over voltage protection, stable power supply, and of course your stainless steel back I/O. Okay, in this particular case, because it's not built on. You have your USB 3.2 Gen 2 and Gen 1. All right, now your Gen 2 is up to 10 gigabytes a second, and your Gen 1 is 5 gigabytes a second. So just to be aware of that. Your PCIe 4.0 is 16 gigabyte per second per lane. Okay, it also has a GPU temperature sensor, multiple temperature sources, and you have a 4-pin PWM DC fan. All right, so just to be very aware of all that kind of extra good stuff. So that pretty much covers the motherboard, everything you're going to get. Hope I've covered everything for you. All right, everybody, so one thing it doesn't have on this motherboard is a USB Type-C header. So just be aware of that as well. It's only going to matter really if you have a requirement for the Type-C. You want to charge things, or your case has a USB-C header, in which case you might want to look for a motherboard that has that on it. And I don't know why, that seems to be something they always don't include. Like almost everything is going USB Type-C for your phones and all that kind of stuff. So I would think that should be almost not an option, but more something that should always be there from this point on. So when it's not, I'm always a little bit disappointed that it's not there. However, overall, this motherboard has everything else you could possibly need. So hope you liked the review. Hope I covered everything you want. I know I stumble sometimes. It's me. It's been a rough week. If you have any questions, of course, let me know in the comments. If you like the video, please give it a like. Helps out the channel a lot. Helps out with the views, all that kind of good stuff. If you're new here, think about subscribing. If you want to support the channel so I can continue to do these videos, think about hitting that join button and hit that bell for notifications so you can see videos as they come up. And as always, thank you for watching. Appreciate your support and hope this helped you out. Have a great day, everybody. Bye-bye.